Welcome to the End of the Bench podcast on this here Tuesday, October 3rd, 2017. I'm your host, Jonathan Slotter, and with me as always, Jazzy James Haldeman. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right. I'm trying to figure out how to have a big boy job and do this podcast. I don't know how you've been doing it for so long. I'm like sprinting back and sitting down, and I actually look nice because I'm wearing work clothes, and it's great.
Well, I think that what you mean is that you are trying to learn how to have a big boy job and then also have a job that makes money on the side. This is job number one.
Yeah, this is how we had like 10 views. I need to mute the Rockets game. We had 10 views in our last podcast, so basically we made $10,000 a piece. That's how it works.
Oh yeah. Okay. Perfect. So this one is going to be an interesting podcast. We have some live baseball that I'm kind of looking over my shoulder. So if you're curious what I'm doing, I'm watching the playoff series as we speak. And then we're going to do our routine. And then we have some NHL plays, which I don't really I just started watching the NFL or NHL pretty recently, so I don't really know too much. But there was some interesting stuff when I was looking at it. And, we'll talk about it. We'll see how we feel.
I'm going to pick whatever team Emilio Estevez is coaching to win this Cup.
Can't lose.
Spoiler alert.
So last week, a very even week in the NFL. Favorites went 8-8 or 9-7, depending on what the Chargers-Eagles game closed that for you.
Yeah.
Making it 26-32-1 on the year. Overs went 9-7, pulling them closer to the unders at 29-34 on the year. Home teams went 8-7-1, one obviously being the London game, making home teams a 34-25-3 on the year. So nothing too crazy there. Pretty much, I would assume that was what we all expected. And I think it's starting to normalize a little bit moving forward. Home teams are obviously still very good, but there was a couple of big upsets at home. At home we had both the Falcons and the Patriots going down.
Yep.
Vegas seems to be settling in on their over/under numbers a little better. And then there's crazy things that happen, like the Seahawks and the Texans scoring like 250 points last week.
That's an exact number.
Yeah, exactly. And so that won't continue. But overall, a very even week. So I found some numbers, which is not really relevant to this podcast, but apparently the Chiefs scoring that final touchdown cost the books over $250,000 in Vegas.
That's awesome because we were talking about at the end of the podcast. I kind of mentioned something about liking the Redskins at +7, and then we got to talking about whether we actually trusted the Redskins, and like in reality we should have. But then instead of just diving on the ball, Justin Houston decides that he's going to return it for a touchdown, and that was like a pretty sweet backdoor cover for. I guess it wasn't a backdoor cover, but it was a pretty sweet cover for the Kansas City Chiefs. That was awesome.
I think they call that a front door cover for the.
Yeah, that's like a screen door cover, maybe. I'm not 100%
sure. So a very eventful week. It seems like teams are getting more into their sets better. The timing is better on passes. The QB play has been better, except if you're Jay Cutler. Line play still hit or miss, it seems like, for most teams. But as the season progresses, we talked about this at the beginning. We thought that teams would start scoring better as the season goes along, just without the amount of practice time that they're being able to get. They're finally starting to get their timing down a quarter of the way through the year.
Yeah, I think you're right. We'll see. I think probably the scoring's kind of normalized, and Vegas has kind of gotten locked in. So over-unders, you'll kind of be looking for value lines from now on instead of like, oh, this is obviously wrong because Vegas hasn't adjusted yet.
Right. So moving on to our biggest surprises of the week, I have 4 main storylines. First one, Patriots. Are we worried about them yet? Is it just early season? Who cares if they still are, not good in November? Then we'll start worrying about it. How do you feel about them?
I like living in a world where Tom Brady loses. But I think their defense is really bad. I think it's going to be up to their offense unless they, they don't have a history of making big mid-season moves. And if that trend continues, I think it's going to be up to their offense to outscore teams, because that defense has looked very, very bad every single week so far. The Chiefs put up 42 on them. Well, apparently the Texans are an offensive juggernaut that scores 250 points now. But, the Texans kind of broke out of their offensive slump against them. The Panthers broke out of a giant offensive slump against them this week. So I am very, very worried about their defense. And I think that's going to put a lot of pressure on Tom Brady and maybe in an offense that doesn't have the weapon in Julian Edelman they thought they were going to have coming into the season. So, yes, I'm worried about them.
I'm worried about them mostly because I kind of view – especially when they had so many new players on defense that they brought in, and I feel like they have a very Popovich approach to the regular season where they do a lot of experimenting to find out what players can and can't do. And then as the season progresses, they start honing in their scheme based on, what they've diagnosed in the first, month or two of the season. And then they're able to scheme better going forward. Now, obviously, I don't think they're as talented as they were on defense, but I think they're more talented on offense, and that's going to be able to offset it. I think that their defense is going to play better moving forward. I think they'll be, an above-average unit after the regular season. Matt Patricia is too good of a defensive coordinator to let this continue, and I would be surprised if this is a problem moving forward. So I think they'll figure it out. And also an update: Twins are up 3-0. That plus 235 on the money line is looking pretty good.
James Harden's still awesome.
James Harden's still awesome. So stuff is going down. Next on the list, Atlanta. They lost their first game of the season to the Bills at home. It could be 1-3 on the year had the Golden Tate catch been overturned, or had the Bears been able to run a competent offense in the final 20 seconds of that game.
Yeah.
And then they have, a couple key injuries, mainly Julio Jones, hip injury. Those are never very good, especially for someone who's getting open based on his size and his fluid movements in the hip. I'm definitely more concerned about the Falcons than I am about the Patriots. It's mostly because I don't think they've played as well as the Lions game was a bit deceiving. I thought that they played better than the final score indicated there, but I really think they should be 2-2, and now they have injuries on offense. So I am concerned about the Falcons. What about you?
I'm concerned about the Falcons simply from the viewpoint of the Julio Jones injury. He's a big part of stretching the field and what they want to do on offense. And if he's hurt, it'll be interesting to see what they can do. I know Mohamed Sanu's probably been, I'm going to talk out of my butt here, the best number 2 in the NFL this year, but he's had a really solid season. So I think it'll be up on a lot of their skill guys to pick up the slack, and I think they can do that. But I do think you're right. They're either, it's like you said, they lost the turnover battle historically bad and still won a football game, which was impressive last week. But against Chicago, they very easily could have lost that game. So there's plenty of ways they can be 2-2, and a couple bounces not their way, 1-3. I think this is more of a testament to maybe we're overlooking Buffalo a little bit too much. They beat a good Denver football team the week before, and then went into Atlanta and got a win. So we'll see how much of it is, we have to worry about Atlanta, and how much of it is maybe Buffalo's just pretty good this year and could win the AFC East.
Yeah, schematically, Buffalo has done a great job given the fact they lost Steve Gilmore. They trade Reggie Ragland, and they bring in these new guys that people assume are just going to be worse, and their unit's better than it was last year. Mm-hmm. Tyrod Taylor, Ball. They still haven't really even got the running game going. LaShawn McCoy's been very pedestrian so far this year. They're making it work with these receivers that are kind of there's no real threat on their receiving core to beat you downfield, which I think teams will end up picking up as the year goes along. But, the way that Tyrod Taylor moves, it kind of in the pocket, it kind of gives them a little more time to get open because they're not burners. And I think their running game will improve a little bit. Charles Clay has been, refound.
Yeah.
He's having like a 2014 Charles Clay with the Dolphins year.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think Buffalo deserves a lot of credit. In going back to the Falcons for second. They have played well with Julio Jones being out prior to this, because it always seems he has some sort of injury, with the foot and the ankle.
There's always something nagging.
Maybe I'm overrating his loss a little bit, but I do think it makes the Falcons, unless they're just going to get amazing play from the running backs, I think it just hurts their ability to be dynamic down. The Rams are the best team in the West.
Well, they get to play Seattle at home, where they beat them the last 3 times they played them this week. So it's certain that they come out of that game with a 4-1 record, right? Like, it's certainly a chance.
The Rams are rough in between a 1.5, 2.5 point favorite, depending on where you go around the books. They are 2 on my book.
I've got them at 1.
So, at 1. Yeah. Okay, so I'm still a little surprised that it came out this way. People are just assuming that Seattle does what Seattle does against bad teams. They run up the score. The game was much closer than 46-18.
Yeah, it was much closer.
The Rams look really good, but they've not faced the pass rush as what they're going to face against Seattle. And Todd Gurley's not going to be able to be a factor in the passing game like he's been. He's just been crushing linebackers. But with KJ Wright, Seattle's uniquely equipped to handle backs out of the backfield, at least in my opinion. So I think, and then Cam Chancellor as well. So I think that Seattle is actually a pretty good matchup for how they're beating people, because, I mean, Todd Gurley, he caught like 32 passes all of last year, and he already has like 16 or 18 this year. So
yeah, he's been surprisingly effective and highly used out of the backfield this year. It's probably one of the reasons that they've been able to be so effective on offense this year. It's just kind of an added dimension they didn't have as much last year.
I mean, he almost had a 100 game against the Cowboys. And, I think if Sean Lee is playing in that game at the end, that, he was being Sean Lee before, but I think, Sean Lee's a very, very good linebacker, especially very good coverage linebacker. I don't think he'd been able to do that. But the Rams defense looks very good. Their corners have yet to be – they held up against – that's okay, but it seems like their defense just isn't as good as it's been in the past. They've given up 39 points to the Niners and now 30 points to the Cowboys in back-to-back weeks. We'll see what they have in a struggling – despite the fact that the Seahawks scored a lot of points. They got, defensive touchdowns and they were throwing bombs and in the fourth quarter up like
up 22 points. Yeah.
So take their offensive output with the greatest salt, I think. But we'll get to see how good or bad the Rams defense is, because I'm a little concerned about them, to be honest.
I think we'll get to find out how good or bad each unit is, right? We'll get to find out a little bit about the Rams defense and a little bit more about the Seahawks offense to see if it was more of a flash in the pan or if it was sustainable for them.
Jared Goff, we'll get to see what kind of mettle he has, because
they're going to be coming at him all day.
Right, and Whitworth has been very good. The pickup from the Bengals at left tackle. Their line play has been much improved. So we'll see how that lines up, which has obviously been a problem throughout the Jeff Fisher era. Now with the head coach, we'll see how that works. Sean McVay just doing wonders for them. And then Seattle. Moving back to Seattle, it was just that they beat the Colts, right? This is not a.
It's an interesting thing to look at, right? Because we talked about last week that this is what the Seahawks do. They start slow, and then they kind of figure things out as the season goes along, and they start having explosions like this. And so you look at it that way, but you also look at it, well, they did it to the Colts, so what does it actually matter? And they really struggled in that first half against the Colts until they completely destroyed my teaser single-handedly in the second half, because I had that game going under like 49.5 as part of a teaser that I killed the other 3 parts of, unfortunately. But yeah, so I don't think last week told us a lot about the Seahawks. They kind of just confirmed some things, that they're much, much better than the worst teams in the NFL, and they like to run up the score on them, right?
Yeah, and Chris Carson was supposed to be good for the rest of the year. I don't know how good this McKissick guy is, despite the fact that he had a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
Forsyth is not really a between tackles runner.
Right.
Has not looked good, so they're going to have to find answers in the running game yet again. But with Russell Wilson, they're uniquely equipped to manufacture those types of plays.
Yes, absolutely.
Now on to the zigzag candidates. I don't know if you had a couple, but I have 5 here. Starting with this Thursday night game, New England at Tampa. New England is, roughly a 5-point favorite, give or take a half a point depending on where you are. I don't think it's below 5. It's either 5 or 5.5.
Yeah, those are the only lines I've seen.
Do you expect New England to bounce back in a big way here against Tampa? Obviously, the books do. I'm sure that people are slamming the Patriots this week on this line. This would be one of the most bet Thursday night lines of the season outside of the first one, which also involved the Patriots. Are you expecting does Tampa have a shot in this game?
I think it'll be interesting. So we're facing a couple things where we're going to have a lot of people in New England because they just had a poor week. And I think New England will be motivated to play better. I think those cliches are a little silly, but I'm certain that they will because they kind of just got embarrassed by a Panthers offense that have been struggling so much. They'll take that pretty personally, I would imagine. But you also they're on a short week now against the Tampa Bay offense that's looked pretty decent, 2 out of their 3 games, and has shown the ability to put up some points. And if New England can't stop vertical threats and they can't kind of contain Tampa Bay this weekend, I think they have a chance to put up a ton of points against the Patriots defense that's looked super shaky and it's coming off a short rest where they were on the field a lot. And that could keep the game close. I don't know. I just think the way – it's what we talked about last week with 9 points against Carolina. That's a lot for them to give up with how bad their defense has looked. And 5.5 against an offense that's with Tampa Bay that's looked as good as it had 2 out of the 3 weeks kind of seems like a big number to put a lot of faith in, I guess.
No, I kind of agree with you there. I'm not as sold on New England bouncing back as others are. I expect a low scoring game in that one, though, or lower than anticipated. The over-under in that game is 56.
Yeah.
Then we have Jacksonville at Pittsburgh. Jacksonville's getting 8.5 points, and I assume that might even go up a half point by kickoff at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh coming off a pretty convincing win against Baltimore, which it was 26-9, and Baltimore really only had one good drive that entire game. And then, but if they get the 2-point conversion, that game is a little different.
Yep.
Jacksonville, a very disappointing loss to the Jets. They had a chance to win it, touchdown called back off a holding call, but still just didn't play particularly well in that game. We talked about this last week. This was a show me your metal Jacksonville game, and they did exactly what we thought they would do, and they lost an inferior team.
We both had the Jets covering last week, didn't we? Like covering 6 or something like that.
It was 3.5. It was 3.5, but yeah.
Was it 3.5? Yeah, we did both like the Jets. I'm proud of us. I'm going to toot our own horn a little bit there. I don't know. Jacksonville's looks great every other week. Maybe this is the week they look great again. And Pittsburgh tends, we've also talked about, to kind of do these things where they just kind of let up on the gas just a little bit and let a team like this hang around. But what I've seen from Pittsburgh has been pretty impressive, especially last week against the Ravens. But the Jags looked really impressive against the Ravens in the kind of comparable competition, I guess. If Le'Veon Bell gets going, that changes
things. Jacksonville a lot.
Yeah, I kind of like Jacksonville this week to cover 8.5 against the Steelers. So
I like that one a lot. I mean, and Pittsburgh is a very public team. I always like betting against the public, so I'm pretty in on that one. We have San Francisco getting 1.5 at Indianapolis. Indianapolis, we talked about it, played pretty well for through 3 or 2.5 quarters. Then just don't have an offense that can keep up with them. Although Brissett looked okay. I mean, he had a couple mistakes, but he had a couple of pretty big plays, and he offers some mobility back there. San Francisco, tough loss to the Cardinals in overtime. They just weren't into the end zone. And that's just going to most likely be their problem all week, and all year. So do you think Indianapolis bounces back? They are favored somehow in this game?
Yeah, I'm not sure how Indianapolis is favored. They've been the least impressive team in the NFL so far, and at least I think San Francisco's kind of had some bright spots. They played the Rams really, really tough. They played Carolina relatively tough. I think.
The game was much closer than 20-3.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I probably like San Francisco this week. If you're going to give me a 1.5, even if they are going into Indianapolis, I feel like they're a better football team. I mean, you're basically telling me that they're favored by a 1.5 on a neutral site, and I just don't think with a really bad Indianapolis team that the home crowd means 2-3 points, whatever Vegas is offering it. I think I probably like San Francisco in that game this week. I think they've just consistently played better throughout the last 3 weeks.
I tend to agree with you, but I think that San Francisco is just going to be inconsistent all year, despite good coaching, and thus I'm worried about them this week because this is just what bad teams do. They play inconsistent. So I think this is more of a play against San Francisco than a play on Indianapolis, and I kind of like Indianapolis in the game, although I don't think I would play it. But my mind might change.
It's 2 bad teams, right? It could certainly just go either way.
Yeah, and that's kind of one reason not to bet it.
Yeah, I would not touch the line. This is not a game I would bet. It's just certainly a fun one to discuss.
This might be the second most, or this might be, for most people, this is probably the best game of the week. It's my second most favorite game of the week.
Yeah.
Personally, we have Green Bay at Dallas. Green Bay giving 2 points. Dallas up early against LA. Looked like they were going to win going away. Looked very much in control going into halftime. And then Wade Phillips, we talked about the Rams defense being shaky, but they put the clamps on Dallas in the second half. They had 3 points. Elliott was not eating anything. Green Bay.
He was still showing off his stomach, though.
Yeah. He had his pads off. That was very strange, and they just wouldn't take the camera. But and then you have Green Bay coming off a very convincing win against Chicago, getting an extra couple days rest here to prepare for Dallas. Hear a lot about the injuries. I haven't seen any convincing updates, and usually Green Bay, not convincing, but I haven't seen any more updates about their injuries, and Green Bay's usually pretty tight-lipped on that kind of thing anyway. So I don't know what to expect in this game. I hope it's a good game. This is going to be a fun game for the weekend. You like this game. You like the Packers?
Yeah, I like the Packers. They're pretty beat up, but I've been impressed with their ability to find ways to win. And I think if you have Aaron Rodgers with some weapons, you're always going to give yourself a chance in a football game if you're Green Bay. And that hit on Devontae Adams is pretty nasty last week, but he still got I know that Montgomery went down, but I just think they have some guys on the outside that can still make plays, and Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb, and I think that'll probably end up being a little bit too much, just at least for them. I mean, I know Dallas is at home and probably not quite as banged up, but I'm a fan of Green Bay, and maybe it's kind of a bias. I have a friend that plays in their team, but that's okay.
But I mean, and Dallas still is missing all of their defensive. Aaron Rodgers ought to be able to take advantage of it, even if Adams is missing.
Yeah.
So that's an advantage. Green Bay is usually pretty decent at stopping the run, not so great on the pass. So I think Green Bay just is like a good matchup against Dallas. And I'm with you on that. I like Green Bay on the road there, giving 2 points. That I like. Minnesota at Chicago. Minnesota just unable to do anything against the Lions. That game is probably completely different. Not only if Dalvin Cook doesn't get hurt, but if they don't give up the ball in Detroit, deep in Detroit territory because of the injury. And then Chicago just played terribly against the Packers. Mitch Trubisky getting the start this weekend, so I'm interested in that game for that reason alone. I kind of like Chicago in this game because I I think it's going to be such low scoring. But Mitch Trubisky going against that defense, which is one of the best in the NFL, that's a tall task. I'm just more interested in this game. I'm not really sure what to expect from either team at this point, just because they're so banged up and there's just a lot of unknowns. But I think it'll be a fun game. Do you have any feeling on it?
Do you have a line on it? I'm not sure what the number is. I haven't been able to find it.
I do. I do. The number has been fluctuating, obviously, because of the injuries.
Yeah, I'm sure that's why I don't have one right now.
Injury to Bradford, in addition to what is the word? Trubisky starting.
Right.
So let me get you the line real quick.
I was just curious because I don't have one. Yeah, I think it's gonna be a fun game to watch. I'm excited to see Mitch Trubisky kind of get his start, and they're kind of throwing him right into the fire going up against Minnesota's defense. They got to be able to get some pressure on him. So it'll be fun to see how he plays.
3.
It's 3?
-3, yep, on Monday.
And we are assuming Case Keenum is starting with that line, I'm guessing.
Yeah, definitely.
So
that's saying they'd be 9-point favorites at home.
Right. And I think that's a big number for a Chicago team that we've seen play well a couple times this year. And now I think you're giving them a better quarterback. I actually.
Yeah, they should have beat Atlanta and they beat Pittsburgh at home.
I probably like Chicago in that game if I have to pick it, just because Case Keenum can look like a stud or he looks awful. So, and I think Cook getting injured that's just super unfortunate. He's been awesome this year. I'm really disappointed to see that, but I think he has a lot to do with when Keenum looks good because he's just such a solid running back. So I think if Keenum's starting and they're without Cook, he probably struggles, and that gives Chicago a pretty decent chance in that game.
Definitely, yeah. So update: 2 guys on for the Yankees, still in the first inning, 1 out.
Update: Carmelo Anthony shoots a lot. Still doesn't pass much.
All is right with the world. All right. Well, I know you don't have any college plays this week for our best bet section. I have a few. I'm
excited you're betting Duke.
I am. I was 5-2 on last week, making me 13-9 on the year. So let's keep the good times rolling. This is probably my favorite game of the entire weekend, both pro or college. Okay. I like Toledo. Eastern Michigan. I know I was a backer of Eastern Michigan last weekend. I thought that they could pull the upset in Kentucky, and they were a Hail Mary away from being like a plus 580 underdog winner on the money line. But Toledo is a very good football team for MAC standards, and they're at home. I expect this to be like a 3-touchdown, 20-point game. I like Toledo at home to take care of the boys from Ypsilanti, is what I like to call Eastern Michigan.
The boys from Ypsilanti. That's my favorite. That's maybe my favorite town name in America that I've ever seen. Every time I drive, because I go to Ann Arbor relatively often for a person who lives in California, my favorite thing is driving past the Ypsilanti signs on the freeway when you go from Detroit Airport to Ann Arbor. It's really great.
Ypsilanti or Kalamazoo?
I like Ypsilanti. Kalamazoo is pretty solid too. Basically, Michigan has the fun town name on lockdown.
They do. I've never been to Ypsilanti. Kalamazoo is pretty boring. Duke. I like Duke giving 2.5 or getting 2.5 points at UVA. UVA is just not very good.
Right.
People overlook Mendenhall, like just thought he was going to go in there and just really. He has recruited pretty decently. Just has yet to bear out for him, and I'm just not sold on him as a coach. Boise State is not very good this year. Went in there and just wiped the floor with Virginia. I think I like. I'm sorry, that was the other way around. But I like Duke. They bounced back after a rough game last weekend. This is more of like a zigzag theory for college than anything. I think Duke's pretty solid. Give me Duke plus 2.5 at UVA. I like Temple. I like riding with the Owls here. They every game they've lost. They're 2-3, and all 3 of their losses have been like I don't know, combined 14 points or something like that.
Right.
So given 2.5 points, not a lot of points. I think Temple's a pretty solid team. I think they'll win by a touchdown. And this is probably not my ballsiest pick, but I think this line is just like out of whack because I just don't think Texas A&M is terrible, and they're like plus 26.5 at home for Bama. Like Ole Miss is awful. Bama's just, you don't know, they just have like a vendetta against Ole Miss that they just took out on them like last weekend.
Right. Yeah.
Alabama hasn't played well, but they always get up for the Alabama game. I mean, everyone does, but they have the athletes really to go one-on-one with Alabama.
Yeah.
Even though they're coaching. And I know the quarterback is very one-dimensional, which is pretty much the only concern that I have in this game for why they not be able to cover. But I think A&M would be able to cover 26.5 against Alabama, even if it's a backdoor cover or something like that. I think the game will be relatively close, actually. I mean, and Bama's just not going to go like 10-2 against the spread like they did last year.
Right.
And they've covered 2 straight weekends.
You mean to run down some NFL games, Ellie?
Yeah. What do you like in the NFL?
Big fan of
Yankees Twins.
All right. You guys are getting it here first if you're not watching the game. We're just really live announcing these sporting events.
Yeah.
That I'm sure you're all on.
Just went deep.
See, we should not have 0 viewers when we're live streaming. They'd be getting such great information coming from us in real time.
That's true.
Anyways.
So, yeah. I mean, the Twins could hit. I could hit the Twins, and I could hit the Yankees over 4.5, and that would be very solid.
It'd be a very good night. We'd all go home happy because we're already home.
Yeah. That's
all
true.
right. First game, big fan of. Buffalo +3 at Cincinnati. I think this line is kind of a overreaction to Cincinnati finally playing a decent football game, and I think Buffalo's kind of proven to us they're really, really good. Beat Atlanta, they beat Denver past couple weeks, and I'm a big Buffalo guy now. At least this week.
Are you not worried? Are you not worried that like everyone's gonna be like, oh, Buffalo's actually good, and then like of course they like aren't.
That's certainly the case, really? But right now I think like, oh man, Cincinnati's not quite as bad as we thought they were, but actually they still are. That's kind of what I'm going with here more than anything.
So Andy Dalton, no touchdowns, 4 interceptions his first 2 weeks, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions his last 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's just Andy Dalton. This is what he does. He just like plays really, really bad or really, really good.
I'm just noting. It was just a note.
I appreciate you. Next game, let me find it. Oh, I like the under 47.5 in the Seahawks and Rams game. We talked about it a little bit before. The Rams own the Seahawks the last 3 times they played them at home, and they've all been in relatively low-scoring football games. I expect more of the same there, kind of like something maybe in the.
I like that because it's like certain teams just have trends.
Yeah, and
it's the same that I'm picking Kansas City and Houston under is one of mine because every time Kansas City and Houston play, I mean, Kansas City usually wins like 20-3, but it just seems like the pace of the game is just very slow.
Yeah, I expect like a 17-14 football game or 20-17, maybe even 12-9 with the Seahawks and Rams. Like it's how they always play out. It's just very, very predictable, if you will. They're going to score 70 combined this week. Watch. We already talked about We already talked about Green Bay and Dallas. I like Green Bay a lot this week. And I had one more that I liked. I think I like the Chargers +3.5 at New York. Somebody's got to win that football game.
What?
And I like the Chargers more than I like the Giants.
Well, I
take it back. It's a 1 o'clock start time for a West Coast team going to the East Coast. Never mind.
Yeah, you can just pound the Giants there.
Pound them. Don't just bet a small amount of money. Bet a lot of money.
Maybe. I don't know.
Your turn.
That's not one of my best bets. I can't bet on 0-4 teams playing each other. That's against the rules. Like that
seems really dumb.
Is a rule.
It seems really dumb, especially when you're going to pick the team that's a West Coast team going to the East Coast for a 1 o'clock start time. I had not looked at that before I said it. Also, they're 0-4, and it's just kind of like fun. So
we talked about I like Kansas City and Houston. like
Hey,
Jacksonville.
wait, I gotta add something to that because I have fire to spit when it comes to Kansas City. Alex Smith is the NFL MVP through the first 4 weeks of the season, and if anybody said they expected that, you're crazy. He's been freaking awesome, and that's because partially probably because Kareem Hunt's been so awesome. But the dude's completing like over 75% of his passes, and also completing long passes this season, which he doesn't get a lot of opportunity to do. And like deep passes have kind of won them a couple of football games, so it's kind of cool to see Alex Smith have a good season. I wonder if knowing that his quarterback in waiting, the quarterback of the future, is behind him, has kind of helped him play a little bit better and work harder this year. It's just interesting.
He's been crushing it.
He's been awesome. Anyways, go.
Against Houston defense.
Yeah, go ahead.
Then I like the under in Tampa Bay, New England. Much of what I was just talking about. I mean, usually we say whenever these overs are high, you should just bet the over. It's just a feeling that this is going to bounce back a little bit. They just can't continue to play as bad as they have. I mean, we saw the same defense play terrible for 2 weeks, and they like shut out the Dolphins and the Panthers. So go for it. And I think Tampa Bay's defense is underratedly good. So I know they're missing Levante Adams. You know, he's very good. But I generally like Tampa Bay's defense. They attack, and they have the corners, I think, to at least play with New England. My last one is a trend pick. I think in the sense that the Cardinals are due to cover this game. Everyone's going to be on Philly. The Philly's giving 7.5 at home in a game for a West Coast team going that way. This used to be a big deal for the Cardinals. They used to like never cover these games, but it's been kind of indifferent over the years now. But I think Philly's banged up. They were lucky to really cover last weekend against the Chargers. I think they're just due for not playing a good game because even in Kansas City, even though they didn't cover, they played really well and they really should have covered. I mean, the game was a lot closer than the 10 points or 7 points that it ended up being. 7 points, right? Because they it was 7. Yeah. So the game was a lot closer than that, and also I just don't think that a team in the NFC East can like take like an enormous lead. Like it's just like the NFC East just has to be a group of teams that just stick together and
they're like together. Anywhere from 10-6 to 7-8 basically is where you finish if you're the
7-9. Yeah, exactly. That's how all the teams are. And so I think Arizona's going to cover. They might win, but I think they'll cover.
Perfect.
So that's my 8 picks there.
Sweet.
And
now I'm going to make Emilio Estevez and Mighty Ducks jokes, maybe a couple Slapshot references, who knows? And Jonathan Slotter is going to tell you his picks for the NFL or NHL season.
So I did a couple team futures. I did a couple player odds, and then I did a couple over/under win totals, and then I did a couple to make the playoff bets. So we'll just see how this goes.
This is a beautiful mess.
A team that I really grew, I really grew respect for last year in watching was San Jose. It just seemed like they were always gritty and they played really well even without Thornton. And I know he's not their best player, but he's kind of like the heart and soul guy.
He has the least amount of teeth, which is really important in hockey.
Also important. So I figured that they would. I think they'll have. I like their odds to win the Stanley Cup because hockey odds I realize are just like all over the place. It was plus 800, which is and the Warriors are like minus like 200 or 150 or something. So that's kind of crazy. But
also in hockey, it's literally just a hot goaltender can win you a Stanley Cup, and they have an excellent goaltender in San Jose.
So I like San Jose plus 2,000 to win Stanley Cup.
Cool.
Be my one Stanley Cup pick.
I hope so. That'd be exciting for everybody here in the Bay Area.
They have worse odds than Anaheim, and I hate Anaheim, and I think they're better than Anaheim.
Awesome.
That's kind of gauge that.
Spiteful. I like it.
So ever since they changed from Mighty Duck jerseys to this, it's been over for me with Anaheim.
That's what I'm talking about. Let's get these Mighty Ducks references up.
You're slipping. You're slipping. I like Minnesota plus 450 to win the Central. Minnesota
I actually like that. I know. I like that makes sense to me.
They're like a really good regular season team, and they're just not good in the postseason. And they almost won the Central last year. They won like 50 games. So I think plus 450 seems really high for that. So I like Minnesota there. And then I had two player props. Ovechkin to win the Hart Trophy is plus 1,000. He's like, which seems like pretty absurd to me. I mean, I know it's like habitual chokers, but they're also like perennial one seeds, and I feel like Ovechkin can very well just win this award. Another person I like is Phil Kessel, who I know he's like the second best center in Pittsburgh, but I also know like Sidney Crosby misses time a lot, and that Phil Kessel could just get over it, and he's plus 5,000, which seems kind of absurd because he could have won whatever the playoff, like the playoff MVP trophy, whatever, because they don't have like a finals MVP. It's like the playoff MVP.
Yeah, we'll call it like the Stanley Plate.
Yeah, whatever.
So we have the cup and the plate, and the plate goes to the player, the cup goes to the team.
Yeah, so he could have won that, and he should not be plus 5,000. That's my reasoning on that.
I mean, it's like the Jimmy G Buckets pick. Value.
Exactly. And then Columbus. I like Columbus and the New York Rangers minus 220 to make the playoffs. Both of these teams have been staples. Like hockey formats, like really weird. But minus 220 seems like pretty crazy for teams that I expect to have like a top 3 record in their conference. I don't minus 220. Like the Warriors are almost minus 220 to win like the NBA Finals. That's not much of a lock.
I really like the Rangers bet at 220. Seems very, very good.
Yeah. I mean that seems kind of crazy to me. And then the Carolina Hurricane. I have them under 41.5 wins at minus 115. This was 6 more wins than their team last year. I'll be honest with you, I'm not really sure who they added, but one win. The one wins in hockey seemed like really hard to come by because there's like.
I'll be honest with you, this team needs to win 6 more games to go over, and I have no idea anything about their offseason moves, but I don't think they're going to do it. This is great. I love this podcast. I'm so glad we're talking about hockey.
But it just seems like a lot to improve. And I went the same way with Colorado. And I know Colorado was the second worst team. Them and Arizona were just awful last year. But their over-under was wins, and I know they had the number 1 pick. But that's 9 more wins than they had last year. They had to win 31 games. They're not going to win 31 games. Take Colorado under minus 125.
You're basically Barry Melrosing right now. That's how much you know about hockey.
I am. Columbus. I love Columbus. Columbus over 44.5 minus 115.
Beautiful.
They had 50 wins last year, and you're saying they're only going to win 44, and they're
garbage.
Team. Columbus.
That's the San Antonio Spurs right there. Consistent performance in the regular season.
Minnesota over 45.5 wins plus 115 after they won 50 last.
Cash
that. And then the other team I actually know about is Edmonton, and I have them over 47.5 wins, and they won. That's only 1 more win than last year, and they had like a goal differential record of like a 51 win team last year. So I think 48.
Just for reference, your story on how you became an Edmonton Oilers fan is my favorite story of how anybody decided to become a fan of a sports team I've ever heard in my entire life.
Yeah, because they shouldn't make shirts that in the wrong city.
It was perfect. It was beautiful. And just like this podcast was.
Yeah.
We were on top of things today.
Yeah, so that's my like 9 or 10 hockey plays that I'm gonna play, and we'll see how it works out at the end of the year.
Because we're degenerates.
And something's got to be played, and I need a reason to start watching why I don't like Carolina to win 42 games.
It's like because of those non-existent moves that we may or may not know about that may or may not have happened, they're certainly not going to win 41.5 games this year.
So I was thinking about what it takes for 6 wins for a team like that in the NBA that would go from 36 to 42, and the NBA also doesn't have ties. So you would have to go from 36 to 42. It would be a lot, right? I mean, that's like adding.
That's a decent move in the NBA, right? Like it's not as hard as being.
That's like Denver. That's like Denver adding Paul Millsap.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll give you that.
36 to 42.
Yeah, and you don't have ties in the NBA, which makes it easier to get 6 wins. Where in hockey you can tie, and I don't know how ties work in Vegas betting, so I can't tell you what that means.
Right.
I assume it's not good for you.
So I think 40. So I think 42 is like. I mean, I think that's a substantial move. Like if it was like from 30 to 36, I think that's like the Colorado one. Like it's easier to go from bad to go from below average to above average.
Correct. Yes, I think that's probably
that would have been a pretty substantial move. Like I know Edmonton did it last year, but they have like the best player in hockey. So
yeah, he's awesome. I don't know his name, but I know he's really, really good because.
Yeah, Connor McDavid, Wonder Boy.
Boom, that's the name.
That's what I got.
Good at hockey. What a great podcast. We've just been so efficient with these last 2 podcasts. We're on top of our game. We're just running through it. All right. Let's call it so you can watch your baseball in peace.
See you next time.
Later, man.